Welcome back to another episode of the Edgehog Business Podcast. Today, I'm joined with Shana Feth. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That
Feth, almost. You see, every time I have a
close.
guest, I always ask him if I pronounce it correctly because I'm always butchering last names. I'm so sorry.
No
Um,
worries.
so Shauna, you are the president and CEO of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, if I'm not mistaken. And you've been there for quite some time. Um, And one of the reasons why I'm really excited to have you on the show is because as a chamber of commerce, obviously you're dealing with all sorts of businesses, most of which are going to be your members. Um, and I think that somebody that is so involved with small, medium, and even large businesses really has a really good understanding of the business landscape, and maybe some of the things that aspiring business owners or existing business owners that may be watching our show could look at and say, okay, these are some golden nuggets of information that will help me get myself to that next level that I want to go to. So Shauna, thank you again so much for joining us. And we can go ahead and get started with a very simple question. How are you doing today?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks. It's a beautiful sunny day in Alberta where I'm at. It's almost like spring here, so really enjoying it. And of course, lots of interesting and exciting things happening in our province and across the country from a business perspective.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously in Alberta, we've been working really hard on some major challenges for our businesses. One of the things that we do at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce is we have our Alberta Perspectives Research platform. So what that is
Mm-hmm.
it's a platform that we we drive analysis and gain insights into what's actually going on in real time with our business community. So what we're able to do with that is we're able to identify kind of the critical points or challenges that our businesses are facing. And, realistically, if we're facing those challenges in Alberta, likely we're facing those challenges across the country.
Okay. What are some of those challenges that you guys have been able to spot in the current business landscape in Canada?
Yeah, so it's interesting because throughout, we've been doing benchmarking surveys through the Alberta Perspectives platform since 2019. And throughout the years, the top three have always kind of jiggled and moved from first to third and around and back again. But really, what we see the top three being for our employers is number one right now, skill shortages,
Skill
challenges from
shortage.
a skill shortages and labor shortages. Number two, supply chains and the ability to get the goods and services that you need. And lastly, inflation. So there's so much
Mhm.
inflationary pressures on businesses right now. So those seem to be the three big ones. And at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, we've really focused our attention on providing supports and resources in those key areas. So when you talk about skills and labor, one of our major projects is in partnership with our Alberta Post-Secondary Network. So the Alberta Chambers of Commerce and the Alberta Post-Secondary Network came together to develop about 18 months ago the Alberta Talent Development Task Force. And the intent of this task force is to create opportunities for students to get into work integrated learning situations much earlier on in their career. What we've been hearing from our businesses, we've got these incredibly skilled, talented, smart students coming out of post secondary. Unfortunately, they haven't had the real world experience
Right.
needed to fill the roles that our businesses have available.
Yeah.
So the project is really focused on three key pillars. So work integrated learning being the most important. Let's get our students in the province and post secondary into those opportunities much sooner on. If we can catch them in the first year of a 4-year degree and get them 4 years worth of work experience during the summer breaks so that when
Yeah.
they graduate after four
Mm.
years, they've had that opportunity to get out there in the real world to actually, and I think another really important thing is to try on too. So if they take an opportunity in the first year and that's not necessarily the right fit for them, well, then they can have another opportunity in the second year or the third year or the fourth year. And then the intent being, the dream is that by the fourth year, they've kind of developed or understand where they want to be in the workforce.
Yeah.
They've developed relationships with employers so that also, from a a student perspective, they're getting into those roles much quicker because they've already created relationships. They already had that experience. So that's the one pillar. The second pillar of the task force is the research and data. So, I talked about our Alberta Perspectives platform. We're using it for the task force to really generate iterative LMI, like labor market information in real time. And why that is so important is because we need to understand what is actually happening in the workforce. Where are the actual gaps? Where are we going to foresee gaps in the future? And what do those roles look like? So the other thing, in the world that we live in with AI, with all of the automations, everything that's changing in all of the different industries, being able to really understand that what we're training for today in post-secondary may not necessarily be the role of tomorrow. And so
Mm-hmm.
how are we tracking those changes? How are we making sure that post-secondaries have that information so that they can adjust programming to make sure that we are really training the skills that are going to be needed in the
Mm-hmm.
future and going forward for our economy in the province? And then the final pillar is an integrated portal. So just an ability for the PSIs, for the students and for industry to be able to have direct contact with each other, to be able to, go right into one portal and say, okay, I'm a student in, taking a business degree. Here are my areas of interest. What jobs are posted? What employers are looking for the talent they need? Which is really, to be able to have that single use portal where everybody knows they can go there. It can feed the information and data back to the PSIs in terms of how many of their students were placed effectively. It can help industry make decisions around hiring students and creating
Mm-hmm.
these work integrated learning opportunities because they can see the success that other employers have had through the portal and through the
Wow.
data and research, etc. So it's a very aggressive project. We're very fortunate that we've had, really unilateral funding. We've had funding from Paris Can through the federal government. Our provincial government has supported with funding, as well as we work very closely with MyTax. So MyTax already has such a fantastic system in terms of setting up work integrated learning opportunities for
Mm-hmm.
post secondaries and students. So it's just been, the dual funded. And then we have the task force itself consists of, our partners, local chambers across the province, also representation from Alberta Post Secondary Network, so presidents of different universities, institutions, polytechnics across the province. We also have our partners like MyTax, like Prairies Can, the government of Alberta, as well as several other emerging technologies, organizations like Cybera and Calgary Economic Development and Alberta Enterprise Group, etc. So we've got a really robust steering committee that forms the task force that really provides a lot of insight and intel into how we move this project forward.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. Um,
Yes, there is.
there's a lot to unpack there, and I think you guys are doing the strategy that you guys are implementing is so amazing because you're going back to the root and the source of for the skills and the labor, right? Which is universities, and you guys are allowing and enabling those connections to happen at a very early stage, but also so that students, because this is something that it's happening here in the U.S. as well. It's like you get out of college and you're like, I'm a fresh college graduate, and the most entry level job requires 4 or 5 years of experience, right? And a lot of times our students are not being able to be competitive. They have this huge debt and they have no real transition into the professional workspace. So I think what you guys are doing there is a great solution to that problem. I do want to ask you about one of the challenges that you mentioned, which is inflation. Obviously, Canada has been in the news lately. Oh, I mean, as much as every other country, with the problems of inflation, right, and inflationary spending, and so on and so forth. So, I do want to ask you two questions on that. Um, on the business landscape, what are some of the ways in which you guys are helping businesses navigate that inflation? And on the political side, what are some of the things that maybe the government of Canada could or should be doing to kind of help with that, mitigate that problem?
Yeah, and so I mean, first and foremost, inflationary pressures on businesses, it's a layering impact, a layering effect is what's happening. So you're coming out of, shutdowns, lockdowns during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily recovering back to the level that you were pre-COVID. In a lot of cases in Canada, at least, there was CEBA loans that were given out to help businesses kind of get through the rough spot,
Yep.
but those loans are all due now. And so businesses are having
Mm.
to refinance large amounts of debt, in some cases at higher interest rates, causing a further debt burden to them. Again, supply chain challenges, all goods and services are going up. All inputs are more expensive than they
Yeah.
were. You look at things like, hidden taxes, like, in the province of Alberta, we have tax on insurance. You have, additional, hidden taxes on, just about everything. And then to add it to that, you have this skyrocketing energy bill. So in Alberta, we're
Yeah.
experiencing
I read
really,
that.
really high costs of energy. And so when you layer all of that together, boy, it makes it really difficult for a small business
Yeah.
to continue. And so, from the political perspective, I mean, obviously, we're a policy and advocacy organization. So, when you talk about the insurance tax, for instance, this is something we've been advocating on behalf of for over 4 years now. And it's really nice to see our colleagues at CFIB now jumping on board to talk about it and why it's so important. Another one that we've been advocating on behalf of for a long time is additional infrastructure and interties ability and capacity on our electricity framework. Things like municipal franchise fees, again, tend to be another hidden tax that businesses are paying. And so those are all things that we advocate directly on behalf of, to make sure that, businesses are aware and that we are in front of our policymakers and our public leaders to let them know that, there are some ways that you can support the businesses. And here are some of the things that could be done from that perspective to ensure that we can maybe push down some of the costs that they're experiencing.
So you all are advocating to remove those taxes. Is that
Oh,
correct?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, again, the challenge with some of those like municipal franchise fees, like the insurance tax, is that they're hidden. So for the most part,
Mm,
unless you're actually aware or made aware of it, you don't actually see it every day.
I
And
see.
so it's making sure that everybody understands that, this is compounding, it's having a compounding effect. And these are some easy wins, provincially and municipally that governments can take to support businesses and provide, you know, give them a little bit more of a margin in their profits than what they're experiencing right now.
Mm. One of the taxes that I find so interesting slash disheartening is the carbon tax. Um, I don't know. It hasn't been implemented in Canada, has it?
Yes, it has.
It has.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and some of the
Yeah.
effects,
So
that
this
positive
is
or negative, that I may be having in business?
Yeah. So, one of the things about carbon tax across the country is that the government of Canada took a pan-Canadian approach. What I mean by that is it's just this blanket approach. They're not taking into
I
consideration
see.
the different geographies of the different provinces. Of course, you would have heard that they provided some relief. This was heavily in the news
Hmm.
late last year. They provided some relief to Atlantic provinces that are burning oil. And so really, you know, let's call a spade, very unfair in terms of how they're treating it. And,
Hmm.
they were very clear and vocal about the fact that, this was going to be a pan-Canadian approach. There would be no relief, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things in Alberta that's really challenging from a geographic perspective, and as you may or may not be aware, is that we decommissioned a lot of our coal plants well ahead of schedule. We heavily are reliant on natural gas to power our energy grid,
Hmm.
where some of our sister provinces, they have additional resources like hydro that they can use to support their grids. We don't have access to those.
I
And of
see.
course, being an energy rich province, natural gas is, our go-to. And I'm not sure if you heard, but, early in January, our temperatures plummeted in Alberta to almost 60 degrees
Wow.
Celsius.
Oh my
below
goodness.
zero. So like
Jesus
just,
Christ.
we're talking about generation lows that we've,
Yeah.
I have no recollection or memory of it ever being that cold in my life. Anyway, and one of the things that happened during that time is that there was an emergency alert that we were going to be looking at, you know, brownouts, potentially blackouts, because it was so cold. And
Wow.
so, as a province, I'm really proud to say, we rallied and everybody shut off their lights, put on candles, lit their fireplaces, did everything that we needed to do so that we avoided that happening. But that's pretty terrifying when you think about power going out
Yes.
to your business or to your house when it's that cold outside, and how quickly that could become a very emergent situation. And so, again, looking at the curtailments and how this is, impacting our ability to continue to provide, even the basic of necessities to our populations is, of course, critical.
And those blackouts, those were a consequence of again the overtaxation on the energy industry, or why
No,
was that? Was just due to the
no,
lack
no.
of infrastructure?
Yeah, nothing to do with taxation, more to do with, the situation around the energy grid, curtailments, all of those types of things. And then of course you factor into, net zero. Again, I can't say it enough. We have a natural gas based energy system. We do, we're heavily supportive of, net zero emissions by 2050. We have tons of wind and solar generation projects on the go, alternative and green energy projects on the go. But the reality is they don't generate nearly as much
Right.
electricity as natural gas. So of course, then in Alberta, we tend to be, impacted more heavily than a province that has hydroelectricity, for instance, and there are no emissions caps on the production.
I see. It's very interesting because the previous conversation that we had today was with the CEO of the American Coal Council, and she was saying something very similar to your. It's like, well, these renewable energies a lot of times are not able to provide enough energy to fuel our economies, right? And as our economies grow, our populations grow, we need more and more and more energy. So it wasn't like necessarily a conversation around is it just renewables or is it just things like fossil fuels? It's how do we come to the table and have some type of coalition or I guess a combination of both of those, right? So that we can provide for the energy needs of a growing economy, but also we're not getting ourselves in a situation where we may or may not be hurting the environment, right?
Absolutely. And then, I don't know exactly your situation south of the border, but in Canada, we have a carbon tax. So, added to the emissions cap, we're also paying a tax on carbon
Also, there's also the
emissions.
emissions tax
In
and the
addition,
carbon tax.
exactly.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we have emissions caps, plus we have the carbon tax, which again is just, especially, our major industry in Alberta,
Yeah.
as it has been traditionally, is oil and gas and energy.
And so what's next in terms of because I know right now there's a big wave of more I guess it's you could say conservatives in the Canadian Parliament right now that are pushing against these things, and I don't remember the name of the leader of the Conservative Coalition in Canada, but he's been very vocal about a lot of these things. So what's next in terms of like the political landscape in Canada, and how is that going to affect business, you think?
Yeah, so Pierre Poilievre is
That's
the
who he is.
leader,
Yeah.
yeah, in Canada of the Conservatives, and he has been very upfront and vocal about some of the things that he would change if he were to get into leadership. I mean, realistically, right now we don't have an election till 2025. I know you guys have one coming up in the fall.
We do.
I believe Mexico also has one coming up in the summer, so
I believe so.
it's
Yes.
gonna there's going to be a bunch of leadership changes, and I think from a business perspective, a voter's perspective, everybody is going to need to really take a look and reflect at who is going to be the next leader
Hmm.
into the next few years, because they're going to be really from all of these key issues and all of these key factors for all of our economies and communities. What is going to be the really thoughtful way of moving forward? Because
Hmm.
we all want to move forward. Nobody, none of us at all dispute the fact that, we need to get to net zero. I think what we all need to come to agreement on is the timeline for that. What is realistic?
Yeah.
How, so for instance, um, Canada, has policy on electric vehicles and mandates around electric vehicles. Well, when you look at what happened to us in Alberta in January, I mean, we were asking everybody with electric vehicles to unplug them during that one crisis period. I
Hmm.
mean, you have to get everything unplugged from electricity. So there again, when you see situations like that rising, it has to beg the question, okay, how would this be sustainable?
Yeah.
Especially in, you guys have extreme cold and extreme heat systems, just as we do. We get extreme cold and extreme hot. And so the ability to ensure that we are able to provide that critical resource, and really, how are we doing that in a thoughtful way that is given enough runway that we're, as we're looking at transitioning, we're also looking at the economy as it is now, and how do we help businesses introduce technologies, introduce things like carbon capture and storage. I'm not sure if you heard, but Dow just announced a $10 billion project in Alberta that's going to be the first of its kind in terms of sequest- carbon sequestration and storage. Geez, I feel silly that I couldn't get that out. Anyway, so those types of projects coming online, that's all pointing us in the right direction, but it's just about the vision and the timeline for how, all of our nations are going to move that forward.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I don't think there's a simple solution to any of this. I
No.
mean, it's a very complex problem, right? It's financial, economic, and so on and so forth. But I think that people like yourself that are advocating on the side of business and saying yes, we obviously agree that we want a better environment. We obviously agree with a lot of these things, but I think where we need to find some cohesion is in the how, right? In,
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't sacrifice our economy. One of the other, and this is just from an outsider looking in, right? Because I'm not Canadian, but one of the things that what at least that I've been researching is some of the social impact in Canada that's also affecting business. So there seems to be a lot of policies around gender and a lot of policies around not misgendering people, and not to say that you have to take a stance in either one of those issues. My I'm really interested is in how is that affecting businesses? Is it affecting them in a negative way, in a positive way, neutral? Is it something that's just more kind of overplayed in the media? It's not necessarily as impactful in the real world or in normal business transactions. How is those social changes affecting business in your view?
Yeah, and I don't even know that it's social changes, but it's social impacts in general on
Hmm.
business. So, for instance, again, I can only use Alberta. That's, my lens, but we saw, unprecedented immigration into our province in this
Hmm.
last year. Fantastic when, I was just talking about talent shortages and how much we need these skilled
Right.
people in our province. One of the challenges, though, is to be able to provide those things within our communities, like housing, like um,
Mm.
medical care, like dental care, like education, making sure that we have the framework and the infrastructure behind that to support those types of things.
Hmm.
Because when you don't, it's really tough. It's not as challenging in the big centers like Edmonton, Calgary, but when you get out into rural communities and you have a manufacturing plant somewhere in a rural community, you're trying to attract people to come work, but unfortunately, you can't provide them with housing, or there's no doctors in that community, or again, the schools for whatever reason are at capacity, or they're being bused to other centers because the school in
Mm.
their community is closed down. Like so,
Yeah.
all of those things really inhibit the business's ability to attract and retain the talent that they need.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, and so from you live, so Alberta's like you said, it's mainly its economy is based on oil and natural gas, right? And so what is the type of industry that you see moving forward as, let's say, these industries start to diminish over time? what is going to come in your view kind of to replace that or to diversify the economy a bit?
Yeah, and I would actually challenge that comment. So yes, Alberta traditionally has always been heavily reliant
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
oil, natural gas. The price of Texas crude is dictates directly to the bottom line of our budgets
Hmm.
provincially. But we're also very strong in, when in 2015 when prices kind of went down and we were seeing kind of a slump there,
Hmm.
our emerging industries such as agriculture, forestry, technology, all of those really started emerging in terms
Hmm.
of diversifying our economy and really
Yeah.
paying attention to where all of these other fantastic resources our province has to offer can be utilized. And all of these different industries kind of became, what we look at now as the future for the new Alberta. And as we look at that transition, and as we look at, how do we ensure that our province's economy is strong and stable, I'm really, proud of our province in terms of how they've looked at things like, diversity in agriculture and value added
Hmm.
agriculture, and how do we create more value within our province in some of these industries. Similarly, around the tech sector and the growing tech sector in our province, things like AI, being,
Yeah.
in the top 10 in the world at, with AMI at the University of Alberta in
Really? I
AI.
did not know that. Wow.
And, so we are really forward thinking as a province. And even in the oil and gas sector, the mitigation strategies like I was just talking about, like with CCUS and bringing all of these new technologies online to still be able to produce the product but reduce the emissions
Hmm.
at the same time, is going to be critically important.
Wow. Yeah, I did not know that you guys were in the top 10 of AI, which I mean, again, it's a rising industry. It's gonna be an industry that's not gonna go anywhere, right? It's
Yeah.
only integrate itself more into our daily lives. I'm also very curious, Shauna. I mean, every culture has its own type of entrepreneur. Like there's the American way of doing business, there's maybe the Chinese way of doing business, and so on and so forth. What would you say is the Canadian way of doing business?
Well, I would say that again, just a very diverse economy from coast to coast. So I'll
Hmm.
again speak to Alberta, and we just have such an incredibly diverse and interesting group of entrepreneurs in the province. Really, their ability to look at new challenges, create new technologies, create new products. I feel so proud to be a part of the province. And personally, like when you talk about the culture, I would draw that right back to the Homesteader Act. When this province was founded, it was like, here's a piece of paper, here's your piece of land, you need to make a living on it. And so now we're all, generations later, all a result of that. And that's why you see
Mm.
so many serial entrepreneurs and such an entrepreneurial spirit in the province. And I think that again, it just draws back to that culture of, just just get it done. We have to
Figure it
get it
out,
done.
right?
And how, yeah, I hate to, just say that, but it's true. We just have that go get it attitude, and that, there really is no challenge that we can't overcome when we put our heads together. And I think that's another thing that, I'm really proud of, is it's a very collaborative province. There are a lot of supports and resources in place for entrepreneurs, whether in startup, whether in scale up, whether they're looking at diversifying. We really do have some fantastic supports and systems in place to help them, with the next iteration of their business. So, again, just I think it's that homesteader spirit we just have in
Hmm.
spades in Alberta. Just really good people who like to solve problems and create new opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I think that's at the heart of business, right? You have to, it's solving problems and figuring out the best solution to solve them, right? And in the process of it, providing value to people that they're willing to pay you for. Um, so I want to learn a little bit more about your own journey. And how did you end up leading an organization that's so involved in industry and in the business economy? So how was that like? How did that transition happen for you?
Yeah, so I was born into a third generation family business. So, and it was my on the maternal side. So it was my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And very interesting because, back in the day, you didn't see very many female entrepreneurs, especially
Right.
young widowed female entrepreneurs that were, generating income for her family based on the skills that she had. And so I got to
Mm-hmm.
watch that growing up. I was able to be, on the front lines of that business, like from my earliest memories, you know. And so that really kind of gave me a real interest in business and in, what we can do and what we can provide for our families. If we use our skills and our talents. On the other side of that, on my father was a manager and in head office with the Alberta Treasury branches, which is our provincial bank. And so through that, I got to move throughout the
I
province. So I've
see.
lived all over the province, which gave me a great love of the diversity of my province. Um, but I got to, sit around the table with entrepreneurs because, throughout his tenure anyway, the bank manager and his clients were friends and they were, they very tightly aligned with each other in terms of what needed to happen in their local communities.
Mm.
So I got to see the front lines of that too, in terms of the deals that were being made and expansions and all those things that were happening, in
Yeah.
my local communities. So I just had a love for it from the beginning. So when I left university, I actually thought I wanted to be an accountant. And that didn't last very long because I realized quite quickly that I just was not at my best sitting behind a desk. I love numbers
Mm-hmm.
and trust me, that has served me so well throughout my career in terms of being able to understand profit and loss, balance sheet, being able to budget and actually, understand journal entries and all of the things that you need to understand as a business
Mm-hmm.
owner. But just did not love it. So I went just ironically as a controller to a large exhibition
Mm-hmm.
in the province and just fell in love with the event side of things and just the ability that we have to impact through some of those events. So did that for several years and then spun out to run my own project and event management company for several years. So
Wow.
ran some major events. So anybody from Alberta listening to this, like Big Valley Jamboree, Stage 13 rock concerts, these are massive events in the province. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of
Oh, so
thousands of
it's like
people go through the gates.
that scale of events.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So did that, and then was approached by the University of Alberta to come do some work with them on one of their projects, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of the rest is history. I took on the role as executive director of the Alberta Business Family Institute, obviously because of my background with
Yeah.
family business and my entrepreneurial background. And so I did that for about 15 years, but throughout that, also still ran several of our own companies. My husband ran a pipeline oil field construction company,
Oh, wow.
and so we had several. Like he is an entrepreneur, he's a serial entrepreneur. So several of those types of projects going on in the background, and also during that time was heavily involved with my local chamber of commerce as well as I sat on the executive and am past chair of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, the organization I run now. As a volunteer. And so, yeah, it just kind of evolved. This opportunity came up, and I just saw, I was having so much fun provincially supporting family enterprises and transition and succession challenges that we're having, supporting them with leadership development plans, all of those types of things. But just saw this as an opportunity to take it a step further and start just getting out in front and advocating on behalf of the businesses, working with the businesses, and trying to, in any way possible, just make this a better, more prosperous province and provide the best possible environment for business and you know, I'd love to say in the country, in North America, you know, uh, in the world. Let's just go the whole world. But
Let's
yeah,
go there.
no,
Yeah.
just
Why not?
really,
Why
yeah,
not?
exactly. But yeah, that really just my passion for being able to support businesses and the community chamber network itself too. Just such a passion for the impact that chambers of commerce have. Across the province and the communities that they're in. We have 108 chambers in Alberta,
Wow.
representing about 22,500 businesses. So just the ability of that network to rally when you're talking about policy, when you're talking about business supports, and then being able to tie that network in nationally to the Canadian Chamber and then internationally through the US Chamber, the Mexico Chamber, from a North America perspective, just that collective voice is really the value of the chamber
Yeah.
network. And, just really proud that I'm able to head up Alberta and just carry us forward. And actually, you said earlier on, I've been doing it for quite a while. I haven't actually, I'm only a year and a half into the role.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
quite new, and it's an excessive learning curve. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it might feel like a long time, right?
Yeah.
um.
Actually, in all honesty, it's
Mhm.
just gone by like in the blink of an eye.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Shauna, I mean, you clearly understand business. You've had such a great experience, and it might just be something that's just innate inside of you, right? It comes from your family. It might just be something that you just have it in you, right? And I think with from a lot of the conversations that I've had with different guests, all of them being entrepreneurs, it's very much the same way, right? It's like I tried a job, but it really didn't feel like it, and then I said I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, and that's what I did, right? And a lot of them they'll trace it back to either a family member or a mentor or something, but most of them trace it back to something in their childhood or just something that was just innate in them. They don't know where it comes from. It's just there.
Yeah.
And your story is very much the same way. Um,
And one
so,
thing I forgot
mhm,
to add too is that when we sold our oil field service and construction companies,
mhm,
again, with this lens of very much around what is our world going to look like in the future? My husband, when he retired, actually serial entrepreneur. Instead of just not doing anything, he started an apiary. So we have a large brood of honeybees all over central Alberta. That it was supposed to be a hobby.
and
It's
now,
not a hobby anymore.
yeah, yeah,
It very quickly became not a hobby, I think, within the first year. But I think too that that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit is,
yeah,
being very grateful for the gifts we've been given and the opportunities, and also very focused on the stewardship and giving back to our
yeah.
communities. And so that's really, this is more of a labor of love. It's never going to make us millionaires, let's put it that way, but just has blossomed into something that we're very proud of.
Yeah, and see, so I was on the board of the Salvadoran American Chamber of Commerce, which is funny because I'm not even Salvadorian. Um, and then I transitioned over to volunteer as the chief marketing officer of the chamber. And one of the challenges has been, which it doesn't seem like you guys have that challenge, but one of the challenges has been how do we get things done in an organization that's mainly volunteer based, right? At least in our case. So, in such a case, how do you get things done in an effective way when either, a lot of the people are volunteers or probably not making a whole lot because it's a nonprofit?
Yeah, and absolutely, we face that same challenge here, and especially post COVID, we've seen a large turnover in the staff, and so we have chambers are very diverse. Let's just put it
Mm-hmm.
that way. You have like your big chambers that have all the resources they need.
Yeah.
Then you have kind of your mid-sized chambers, but then in Alberta, we also have a large number, upwards of 50 chambers that are actually volunteer round. They don't even have
Mm.
a paid staff person, and so really from our perspective, how do you support those chambers?
Yeah.
How do you provide the resources and tools necessary so that they can do what they want to do in their
Mm-hmm.
communities? Um, Also from, the staff perspective, what professional development training and resources are available to them. And let's face it, I mean, chambers were hit just the same way that businesses were during COVID. So
Yeah.
coming out of the slump and trying to get back into, many chambers provide so much to their communities. They're providing some of those cornerstone events that bring
Yeah.
community together, but those are also some of their biggest revenue generators. And so having a lot of
Yep.
that shut down during COVID created a bit of a slump for a lot of chambers to recover from.
Yeah.
And so I think we're now in just in a renewal. So one of the things that we're doing at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce is during COVID, we stood up what was called Chamber Market.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very cost-effective e-commerce platform for
Oh
any
wow.
business in Alberta who didn't have an e-commerce site, didn't have the ability to create one or the
Wow.
resources
Very smart.
to set up. And so that was the beginning of what we now call Chamber Platform. Now what we're building is what we're trying to do is future proof our chambers in Alberta. So
Yeah.
it's an integrated platform that contains our chamber market, but it also contains the abilities for chambers to set up websites, creates their ability to manage their members. So many of our smaller chambers, we're still doing paper invoicing, collecting
Mm.
checks, all of that, large administrative burden. This will allow them to digitize all of that and manage their members so that their members can come onto the platform and access the events module, which we just launched
Yeah.
just in the first few months of this year. So now they can manage their events electronically. They can manage their membership electronically. We're building in a CRM, so a member relations management tool. Our Alberta Perspectives data and analytics will be housed there. We're looking at adding all of our value added programs. So those programs that are providing discounts or resources to our businesses across the province
Yeah.
will be housed there. Our peer-to-peer referral network, so hire by referral network, will be housed there. We're working on a large supply chain project where that portal will also be housed there. Our talent development portal that I talked about as part of this other project will be housed there. So essentially, it's going to be a one-stop shop. You'd be able to, as a chamber, manage all of your business on the platform. But as a business, what's beautiful about it is you can go on there and you can pay for your membership. You can register for whatever event you want to go to. You can look on the Hire by Referral Network to see if there's some people that would fill the gaps and resources that you need. You'd be
Yeah.
able to go onto the portal and say, okay, I need that post-secondary student to come and do some work integrated learning. I
Mm.
want to tap into that value added program and realize those cost savings. So really, it's very ambitious, let's put it that way, in terms of the tech and the development behind it. But we're just so excited about the vision of it and how we're going to be able to support our chambers in the province going forward, to create some non-dues revenue, to create some efficiencies around administration of their chamber. So this is something that we're doing to, like I said, really, we just want to ensure that our chambers are successful going into the next generation.
Wow. That's incredible. How are you guys developing all of that? You guys have like a group of in-house developers? Are you guys
No.
outsourcing that or
We've outsourced it to just a fantastic group and working in partnership with individuals in Canada, in the States, and just getting great results in terms of the development side. Like I said, it's a labor of love. So,
yeah.
for every step forward, sometimes it feels like you take a couple steps back because you're working out bugs and things like
Yeah.
that.
I
But
mean, that's with any
once
business, right?
of course. And so once the platform is fully integrated, though, it's just the vision of, where this thing can go,
Yeah.
everything from, our supply chain project, which, again, housing, readily accessible supply chain information so that you can get the suppliers you need and you can make those connections between, in Alberta, when you look at Fort McMurray and you look at Lethbridge, one's way far north, one's way far south, you may not know that the widget you're looking for is up in Fort McMurray. And so creating again just that consistent ability to provide businesses with the resources they need and provide the chambers as well with the resources they need going forward.
And for all you know, this could just turn into some sort of CRM software, right? That you end up selling it or even becoming like a software company at one point, right? Of servicing different chambers of commerce because I do know that there's I actually myself I work for a SaaS company that works specifically for member organizations like chambers of commerce, and a lot of what you're saying is kind of what they had or what they currently have. So there's definitely a business and definitely a need for that.
Yeah, and we just tag it as built by chambers for chambers. So I think the
Hmm.
uniqueness about what we're doing is we come from the inside of the chamber world. We know what
Yeah, so you
operations
know
look like. We know what those administrative functions are. We know where we can
yeah.
provide relief and resources. And so we're really excited about that. And yeah, the intent is that we will, we're focusing on Alberta right now, but we also have some sub licenses in Manitoba right now that are beta testing and coming onto the platform. So the intent being that, if this goes the way we see it going, we could be providing a solution for chambers anywhere
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and
as we
you
grow it and as we, get the kinks out of it and all the things that we're doing. But it's pretty exciting for us.
Yeah, and I mean, and I can only imagine you guys are probably going to have a very, very quick growth and adoption because I mean, you obviously have a great product market fit because you're a chamber, you understand exactly what chambers need, but also you could probably leverage a lot of the connections that you currently have as a chamber to at least get yourself in the door with most of these conversations, right?
Exactly. And through our partnerships, it's
Mm,
just and our relationships with, all of our colleagues across the country. So it's like I
that's
said,
very
we're
smart.
we're in the process where we're, slowly bringing modules on. Like I said, we just got the events module on and there's been some beta testing on that and we've had a couple successful events, which we're really excited about. So now it's just a matter of adoption, really. The actual impact of the platform will be the adoption rate and being able to get critical mass so that we are able to realize cost savings, we are able to realize B2B savings, B2C savings, all of the things that we're trying to achieve, digitizing operations for businesses that may not necessarily have the ability to do that at the
Hmm.
same level or capacity. And again, digitizing operations for our chamber members and supporting them.
That's awesome, and I really love the idea of having like an e-commerce store for your members. That's such an value add because you're right. A lot of businesses that have been doing business the same way for a long time, they have a successful business, and they might not even know that or they might not even know how, or that there's this huge opportunity in things like e-commerce and so on and so forth, right? Or maybe they just want to save the cost of having it already being provided by the chamber, and so they would probably be a lot more likely to just purchase a membership if they have so much value, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And there again, that will generate that longevity
Yeah.
for our local chambers as well.
Awesome, awesome. So, Shauna, as we're coming close, we're coming close to our time here. First of all, I want to thank you for obviously for your time, for your experience, for sharing, all of the ins and outs of the business landscape in Canada right now. Because I think more people need to know about it. Because there's a lot that we can learn from it as well. So, Shauna, as we close off today, is there something that you would like to leave our audience with, so that they could walk away from? Um, After watching our episode here.
I just think that from my perspective, and again, I'll speak to our research. So we just did a benchmarking survey that indicated that 60% of our businesses were, somewhat positive about
Hmm.
the landscape, the economic landscape going forward. And I think just that sense of optimism is just truly entrepreneurial. And
Yep.
again, some of my previous comments, just knowing that there's a challenge and that can be fixed, and knowing if you're experiencing challenges that there are organizations like the Chambers of Commerce that can support you as you're going through those. And that's really why we exist and love doing that. And for myself, I love the business community. I love the advocacy, and I love being able to generate change and impact change on behalf of our businesses in the province.
That's awesome. And I hope that anybody listening to this, if they are in Canada, if they are in Alberta, they can become a member. I really encourage them to do so. Being a member of a Chamber of Commerce is hugely beneficial to you and to your career and to your business. So again, Sean, I want to thank you very much. We're gonna make sure to link to you and to the chamber in the description of our video. And like always, I encourage everybody listening to please subscribe and to follow us for more great interviews with amazing people such as Shauna. So again, Shauna, thank you very much. It was a true pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Raphael.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.